Alrighty, welcoming back to the show, JJ Bruno is in the house.
Hey,
Kids. And so thought we'd do a big free-parter on just kind of cult and beloved and somewhat forgotten cartoons.
Yeah, I think the 70s is going to be the big one.
Totally. Also joining us is Tom Lindaman. How are you, buddy? Hello.
Hi, Tom.
Howdy.
In a world where we can hear Tom.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Major Tom.
Or if Charles Nelson Riley does it, it's ground control to Major Tom Hall.
Tom Hall. Oh, man.
Oh.
Oh, it's off to the NRA we go. I got dark. So, yeah, JJ just said, let's just go into just like cartoons. I said, sure, let's maybe split up by era a bit so it doesn't get too convoluted. But it's we just figured, hey, this would be kind of a fun trip back in time on the kinds of cartoons you could or couldn't say back then versus now, where everything is just poop and gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
Where we went from like HR Puff and stuff to the Family Guy is now like it's this big chasm we've just crossed over.
Totally.
And but yeah, cartoons in the 70s, they were just, I mean, it was amazing to look at them when you go back and look at them in the all together.
What's still being drawn on cell, it's 2D.
Yeah. There's and every studio had a different type of animation. If you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is backtracking a little to the 60s, but I mean,
this is going back to the 60s, but 68, 69, but it's, I think there was the explosion in 70.
It wasn't uncommon. I mean, Don Bluth in the 90s and early 80s, often, people like him had worked for Disney and then would do independent movies for Universal, Sony, or Fox. Yeah. But in the 60s or 70s, you're mainly seeing kind of stuff like The Incredible Mr. Limpet. Stuff is like, they might have worked on a Disney or Warner Brothers cartoon at one point, but for the most part, they were just doing, left to their own devices, doing what they wanted to do.
Well, you got to think, too, the studios that were doing cartoons for kids, the two big ones were Warner Brothers and MGM. And then when MGM shut down, Hanna-Barbera went off and did their own thing. And Warner Brothers shut down their animation department, and they had all these shorts with Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, the Roadrunner, and Coyote, where they said, okay, you know what, let's put them on TV and see what happens. And they didn't expect to have this big, this big thing going on where people were going, oh wow, kids were going, oh wow, that's so cool to watch this. And these were cartoons that were like, 15
played before
20,
a feature.
Yeah. But Hanna-Barbera and Filmation, if anybody knows Filmation, they were kind of like, Tom, if you remember.
And you really got to really school everyone, because you can casually ask them, is like, you do know Filmation, and so many people will just respond to like the recent stuff they've done. You're like, no, we're talking
not He-Man. We're talking, which was a parody of MASH. I keep thinking they did the Oddball Couple, but I might be wrong on that. They did the Archies.
They did like Tarzan, Batman, the New Adventures of Batman.
Yes.
Batman, Tarzan / Batman the Super 7.
Yes. Oh God, yeah. It was Batman the Super 7, then Isis in the Super 7, and then they did Black Star.
Oh yes.
And so but Filmation had this way, and then Filmation's actually the first one that did the Justice League.
Yeah,
That's
Super
right.
Friends and all that.
They didn't. No, it wasn't the Super Friends.
Oh,
it was the Justice League. They got the rights from DC.
Oh shit!
Before they were bought by Warner Brothers, and they did. And this is weird. They did all the Justice League. They did the Teen Titans, but it wasn't the Teen Titans with Robin. It was Aqualad, Kid Flash, Wonder Girl, and who was the fourth one? Speedy. Yeah. Yeah. This is like the late 1960s. And then they got the rights to do the Warner Brothers stuff. So they were putting out the Warner Brothers animation, but it was really watered down. I mean, they got Mel Blanc back, but it was watered down kind of stuff that they were doing. So their kind of Filmation kind of puts the first shot across the bow. But Hanna-Barbera, with their wizardry, begins to put out Johnny Quest.
Yes.
Which is the first real primetime, I mean, granted, you had the Flintstones and you had the Jetsons, which are two landmarks in cartoons.
Totally.
But you have Johnny Quest, which was drawn by a guy named Alex Toth.
Yes, and he was responsible for the design of the Super Friends.
Yes, but he also did the Herculoids, Space Ghost.
Yep.
I don't think he did. He didn't do Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles.
Did he do the original C-Lab?
Yes, he was part of that. Yeah, the original C-Lab, where it was supposed to be well, there was another educational show that they did where people shrank down. Remember that one?
1,000%. And what's funny is I was just so used to seeing them do Hanna-Barbera stuff in blocks, and because they would do so many specials that they would replay years later with them all in a giant special together, I always assumed it was a variety show growing up. But no, a material like Hong Kong Phooey and even Jabberjaw, I was just so used to seeing them after a rerun of Scooby-Doo or the Flintstones. I just always, I knew it was part of the same machine, but I always figured it was part of a animation block, just like they did later on with Looney Tunes and even live action shows like the Three Stooges, just where, and they're just repackaging. And then the only new animation is for syndication is just new host segments that are animated.
Yeah. But Tom, if you remember, there was that one where they shrank down. Like they would go, it was like a micro adventure or something like that.
Is it Fantastic Voyage, maybe?
No. Fantastic Voyage was Filmation.
Oh, that's
because
right.
they did. Yeah. There was Fantastic Voyage, and there was Journey to the Center of the Earth, which I remember watching after kindergarten as a kid.
Man.
Because it was Ted Knight doing the voice.
Yes. I love that, man.
and it was based on the actual movie with James Mason and Pat Boone.
60s, yeah.
And it was really fun to watch. That was like, it was like all the stuff Filmation had. They had a package with one of the local stations here, which was Metro Media, and they would like run the cartoons. So we got, Tom, you might remember, Tom and Jerry. We got to see Tom and Jerry after school. We got to see, a lot of the Filmation stuff. I couldn't get into the Archies. What was
Horny Teens does that to us sometimes. Just makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah. But the thing was, Filmation was kind of kicking Hanna-Barbera's butt a little bit. And then all of a sudden in 1969 or 1970, the Banana Splits appeared.
Oh, yes.
Now, here's the tricky part. Here's the funny part. I'm sorry. The Crofts designed the suits for the Banana Splits. And they said to Hanna-Barbera, hey, we're going to do our own thing. So then they decide to do live action cartoons.
Wow.
Yeah. First thing on the docket, they get HR Pufnstuf. Then they do the Bugaloos, which is 4 British kids dressed as insects.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after that was Lidsville. Then after that was Sigmund and the Sea Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did Land of the Lost, which is probably the most iconic classic show they ever did. And then they did The Far Out Space Nuts.
Damn.
I said lunch, not lunch.
Oh, God, yes. And Chuck McCann and Bob Denver.
Of all people.
Oh. Did you ever get the feeling they wanted to get Alan Hale for that role, but they were like, no, you know.
He's too busy doing Gilligan's Island.
He's too busy managing the lobster barrel that he owned.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. There were some other ones. There was one that starred Ruth Buzzy and Jim Neighbors.
Lost Saucer.
Yes, that's it.
Saucer.
And they had the Dorse, which was the donkey and it was the donkey and the horse. And Alice Playton was in it. Alice Playton was the played the gargoyle in Legend.
Nice.
She was really tiny. She was tiny. I know. I'm friends with her husband Joshua White on Facebook.
Sweet.
She passed away some time ago from complications of diabetes. Sadly, but I remember those shows. Like, you remember? Yeah, it was Bruce Buzzy and Jim Neighbors, The Lost Saucer.
They also had. They were also responsible for. What was it called? It was the Bay City Roller Show.
Yeah.
Horror Hotel.
Yep.
And that was kind of the fun of it all. Just basically anyone could do kind of a show as long as it was just kind of not too dissimilar for what was already being played. You know, you could do an animated basketball show, you could do an animated variety game show.
Well,
and don't forget the wonder that was a Cross Super Show.
Yeah.
Right.
Did the Bay City Rollers one come after the Croft Super Show, or was that before? Okay.
It was before, because Cross Super Show came in after that, because they had remember in the second season they had Captain Cool and the Kongs.
Yeah.
Then they also had
Bigfoot
and Wild Boy. They had
Electra Woman and Wonderbug, Electra Woman and Dyna Girl.
Dr. Shrinker.
Yep. With Jay Robinson, who played Caligula in The Robe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Billy Barty. Magic Mongo.
Oh, yes.
But here's something funny. Michael Lembeck, who you may know from I'm trying to think what show he was in. He directed a lot of the episodes of Friends. He played Captain Cool.
Oh, yeah.
And if you remember the first season, they were done up like a glam rock band.
Yes.
And then in the second season, they kind of toned it down a little bit.
Yeah, and they went from 5 members to 4.
Yeah, they went to 5 to 4. They got rid of Flatbush because I think he left. And it was Turkey, Super Chick, the one Louise Duarte did. Shoot, her name. Super Chick
Nashville?
was Deborah Nashville, yeah. Deborah Klinger was Super Chick. And Michael Lembeck was Captain Cool. And then on Magic Mongo, that was Lenny Weinrib, who was the voice of Time for Timer.
Oh my!
Oh yeah.
Remember that? That was Magic Mongo, and then Michael Lembeck's sister Helene played the I don't want to say chubby, but she was kind of, she was the chubby friend on Magic Mongo. Helene. She was whatchamacallit on Welcome Back, Kotter. Hotsy Totsy.
Oh wow!
I think she was Hotsy Totsy. Yeah.
Hotsy Totsy, I thought was Deborah something or other.
No, yeah, you're right. I forgot her name but Helene Lembeck was on that show. Was on Welcome Back, Kotter. But the Crofts kind of put everybody to shame with the live action stuff.
Well, and the Electric Company was big during that time. It would have animated segments just like Sesame Street.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like your first foot in the door, with all this stuff they were doing on Sesame Street, because that was kind of like Yellow Submarine-ish.
Totally.
And then all this stuff on the Electric Company was kind of like, psychedelic patterns and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, that kind of puts your tone. But, like, you think about it, like, all the animation we were looking at back then, it kind of jumbles up into one big ball.
Yeah. It's basically, definitely had a giant market, and I think it's still sought after.
What, the Star Trek?
No, Filmation.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think most of the Hanna-Barbera library got bought by Turner Broadcasting, but they only replayed, I think, half of it after like 94, I think.
Yeah, well, you got to think too. I mean, some of the shows Hanna-Barbera did, a lot of them skidded under the radar. Like
they're more likely to be shown on Boomerang, like at 2 a.m, because that's the kind of crowd that's looking for that kind of classic cartoon era.
Well, it's like, who remembers the Skatebirds?
I do.
Yeah, I do too. I remember the Skatebirds, and I remember they had the.
I heard of it.
It was the Skatebirds, and they had that one short on it. Not Danger Island. That was on the Banana Splits. It was another one.
That was a Mysterious Island.
Mysterious Island. Yeah. And remember, they had the bad guy's name was Dr. Strange.
Yes.
And any kid who was reading Marvel comics at the time was going, "Wait a minute, Dr. Strange isn't a bad guy."
Different Dr. Strange.
The synopsis is like 3 kids and their robot pops are flying over. Dr. Strange finds out the robot's there. He could take over the world with the robot. He forces them down. The robot is actually, I think, Robbie the Robot, right?
Definitely heavily inspired.
I'm trying to remember if it was or not.
If no, it was an incredible facsimile.
Yeah, kind of looks like him, but
just different enough to avoid copyright.
Yeah, it's not the Lost in Space robot, but
close enough.
Dick Tuenfield isn't doing the voice, but Tom, what are some that you remember?
Oh, one of my favorites growing up, I was even just a little kid when they came out, was Super Friends.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Replayed.
Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice.
The Super Friends will rise again.
And the odd thing was that Ted Knight was also the announcer for the first season.
Yes.
And I would always remember watching him on Mary Tyler Moore and saying, the same guy that's doing that? Going, Mary.
Mary.
Monroe.
Mary.
Hello.
Mary. Well, here's the funny thing, though. When you watch that, they had Wendy and Marvin, and Wonder Dog.
Yeah.
Which was kind of like Scooby-Doo, right?
Yeah.
And then they come back 2 years later with the Wonder Twins.
Yes. Zan, Jaina, and Gleek.
Yeah. Zan and Jaina and their space monkey, Gleek.
And really, is there such a thing as too many space monkeys? I think not.
No. There's a planet of them. There's a planet of space monkeys, and they have a statue of Gleek, our hero,
A planet where space apes evolved from spacemen?
You'll never find it, Taylor.
And just those raspy voices were just they really got you. This is like that. Before they had it to where everything would end shocking or comedically and prevent you from, changing the channel back then, is like, at that point, is like, as a kid, you were just so wowed. You're like, yeah, you really did want to see just kind of the adventure, and those just deep voice characters that are threatening the main protagonists are just illuminating.
the funny thing is that when you look at the guys who did the voices of the Super Friends, they're guys that you may have seen on TV that you never realized were on TV. Well, first off, the big one is Casey Kasem was Robin.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Olin Soleil, who you might remember, who you may have seen thousands of times in other movies. He was on Andy Griffith. He was on all the. I think he was in. What was it? The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. He was the voice of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon Farrell was the voice of Wonder Woman, and that to me is, between Linda Carter and her, they're like the first real representations of Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Aquaman was Norm Alden. Then it changed to another guy.
Nice.
I forgot who that was. And then Danny Dark was the voice of Superman. This looks like a job for up. When I hear him go up and away, I get the hairs on my, because he had that heroic voice about him.
Yeah. But and the thing about Super Friends for me was, at first it was just like really lame kind of villains, like misguided people more than anything else. And then they revamped it so that there were a few more villains with
those early seasons are just like early Scooby-Doo, where the bad guys and the heroes are definitely not in the same room at the same time, just because then they get a bigger staff. They can hire more animators to frames.
And the thing was that they would have guys like Mal Havoc, which was like a thing of like Lord of the Rings. You remember that? And
I remember the episode. I own that episode, and
did you really?
It's still one of my favorites. Yeah,
you have your own personal museum where everything is heavily guarded, bulleted up.
No,
cannot touch it.
I just have a DVD collection that is a little bit eclectic.
All right,
but the thing about Super Friends to me was that then you got into the season with Challenge of Super Friends.
The best one. The best one.
That changed the game completely.
Yeah, because who did you have come in that year? You had the Legion of Doom, right?
Yeah.
Which to me was like, because that's the year Star Wars comes out too, I think. So they're kind of Hanna-Barbera kind of looked at Star Wars and said, okay, we have to have Lex Luthor.
This is how epic TV has to be now.
Yeah, this is how things are going to be now. And then they bring in the Green Lantern, Hawkman, the Flash, and then they create three of the best superheroes, I think, with no backstory or anything. Samurai, Black Vulcan, but Black Vulcan had appeared before, and Apache Chief. And I think that was a really great call on Hanna-Barbera's part to have those heroes included.
Yeah, it was a step forward, definitely, but it was still kind of I call it the Black Lightning syndrome.
Yeah.
Or Black Goliath or whomever. You have a superhero, but you want to make him different. You just make him black and throw the word black in front of his name.
Yeah.
I never really saw much of the 80s version, and it just didn't have, but from what I did see, it just was one of those, like, not anywhere close to, what the Awesome 70s show did, which was, it just had that catchy theme, and you just wanted to just kind of get up and just run along with these animated characters.
Well, the thing was, the beginning is so great. It's like, banded together from remote corners of the universe, 13 of the most evilest villains of the world.
Of the universe.
The Legion of Doom. Their objective, the conquest of the universe. Only one thing stands in their way. The Super Friends. And you're dun, 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 and you see the march, and you see they do the lineup, and you're like, yeah, go get them, And it's like you see Superman fighting, Batman and Robin are going out. It's like all the Flash spinning around like crazy. It's like you see Black Vulcan and Apache Chief, and like Apache Chief grows to be like 50 feet tall, and he's chasing Giganta. I mean, that was when you're a kid, you're like, yes,
It's a roller coaster, but it's in animated form, and I think the later, as close as they ever got in animated form, The Brave and the Bold was pretty good at making fun of the various all-star lineup, along with kind of doing an animated version of the Adam West Batman, but it was with the
Well,
70s original. It's just very fun and pleasant. You can just start your morning to it.
Here's the funny thing about that is that Adam West at that time was doing the New Adventures of Batman and Robin, so it was him and Burt Ward, right, Tom?
Nice. Yes.
That's right.
And they had
Batgirl, Batmite,
and Batgirl.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of did it like the old Dick Sprang Batman, like the Neil Adams Batman, that kind of stuff. It had that. It had that feeling of the TV show, but they couldn't. They had the Joker and they had the Riddler and they had the Penguin, but they had all these other characters that were just like one-off characters.
I know they also had Mr. Freeze.
Yes, they had Mr. Freeze,
Catwoman,
who looked nothing like Julie Newmar or Eartha Kitt.
Yeah, but it was a lot closer to the comic at the time, right?
Yeah,
which kind of made sense.
Yeah,
Totally.
And then I'm sorry if I'm interrupting and stuff, but
no, it's fine.
Adam, that goes off the air, and then in '85, it goes to Super Friends turns into Galactic Guardians.
Yeah,
Superpowers team, and the big news is that Olin Soleil is not going to voice Batman anymore. He's going to voice Professor
Stein.
Professor Stein with he's going to do the voice of the Professor with Firestorm. So who's going to voice Batman? Adam West. And when Adam West comes back, and when you see him, and he goes, "I think there's a way we can handle that, Superman." You're like, I've been waiting for your little 10-year-old mind goes. Your little 10-year-old mind goes, I've been waiting for this moment all my life.
Just to hear.
Is this what sex feels like?
In cartoon form, yeah.
honestly, you're gonna hit the puberty's gonna kick in any minute, and you're just like going, "Oh,
I'm only 8, but
yeah." But Tom, you are correct. Super Friends was the show. You got up at 8:00 in the morning or whenever it was on in the 70s, and you watched it, and you were at the end when that theme song came on and they were like flashing the credits. You were like, "Oh, another week till this happens again," And I still have the Super Friends March as one of my ringtones.
Nice.
On my phone. Yeah, I did have it. I had that, and I had Challenge of the Super Friends as my ringtone too. So I lost them a while back, but
oh man,
the other side of the channel or the stations, CBS puts on Shazam.
Oh, Shazam! The Secrets of Isis.
Yes, it's in that line of Filmation doing the live action stuff.
Yeah,
because it's Uncle Croc's block, right? Remember that? You may not remember that. Uncle Croc's block with Charles Nelson Riley and Jonathan Harris. Then they do Arc 2.
Oh,
which had now everybody thinks that was the vehicle in Damnation Alley with Jan Michael Vincent. It wasn't.
Nope. But the vehicle did eventually become a seeker in a subsequent show, Space Academy.
Yes, and that had Jonathan Harris in it, and Pamela Ferdin, who was in the Paul Lynde show.
Yep, Pamela she was also in a Star Trek episode in The Children Shall Lead.
Yes. Yeah.
As was Brian Toshi.
Yep. Brian Toshi was in that. Wait, was that? Yeah, that
was the strategy back then. Be in a few drive-in movies and be on a variety show, and then do these voiceovers in addition to guest starring on whatever is a big primetime thing if your agent's good.
Well, the thing about Star Command when that came out was that everybody was expecting Jonathan Harris to be like Dr. Smith.
Yes,
and he wasn't.
He's just typecast because like once you're in sci-fi you don't leave it, so
he's like a straight by the book commander. He's kind of like
a maniac scientist who's trying to fraud his way back into the captain's good graces. He's the guy leading the charge. Saying,
he's the guy leading the charge.
Do you want to lead?
The guy was, providing some great wisdom and leadership, and
I mean, his character is a great character,
Yeah.
But when you go back to Shazam, that came out. Les Tremaine, who's in a whole bunch of horror movies.
Yes.
The slime people.
Yeah, the slime people. And what was the one with the giant rocks? You remember that one with the rocks, the rock monsters?
Creatures, right? Yeah.
I think that was it. Yeah.
I think you also saw the spinoff, Jason of Star Command.
Yes.
Oh yes.
And there you go. You got Scotty leading the way that time.
Well, first it's Scotty, and then you've got the lawman.
Yep. John Russell, I think.
John Russell, yeah.
And then
they paint him blue.
And Sid Haig, of all people, from Buck Rogers and future Rob Zombie collaborators on there too.
well, with Shazam, going back to Shazam for a minute, you had Les Tremaine. He was in North by Northwest. He played the auctioneer in North by Northwest.
Oh, wow.
He was a radio announcer. Michael Gray was in the Brady Bunch and the Brian Keith Show.
Oh, man.
Which was called The Little People after the second season. Yeah. And then Jackson Bostwick kind of came into the part as Captain Marvel.
Damn.
And we keeping you awake? No, I'm just kidding.
Damn.
But I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding around.
Oh man.
But if you remember the opening part, it was summoned by among all others from the elders Solomon, Hercules, Atlas,
Zeus, Achilles, Mercury.
Billy Batson and his mentor travel the highways and byways of the land.
It's like the land,
righting wrongs,
tongue twister-esque,
defending justice and seeking justice for all. In time of dire need,
when young Billy has the power granted to him by the immortal,
utterance of a single word. Utterance of a single word. Shazam!
A word that transforms Billy into the Flash, into the mightiest of all mortal beings, Captain Marvel. And while we're here, can we just say that I think it was Lou Scheimer, wasn't it, who did the?
Yep, that was Filmation.
Fucking A, that's great.
Lou Scheimer.
And let's not gloss over the fact that he had the best of voiceover, like the stuff, the introduction stuff. He had the voice for it.
Oh yeah.
He made the show as much as anyone else.
Yeah, if you heard him in the beginning of Arc 2 or Shazam, ISIS, Jason of Star Command, and Space Academy. No, Jonathan Harris was Space Academy. I'm sorry.
Yep.
When you saw that rotating circle, it was Norm Prescott and Lou Scheimer. His voice was so like he had that radio announcer's voice.
Oh yeah.
Very dark timbre to it,
That's pretty much what it is. It's the voice you actually do use when you're a lumberjack and you yell timber.
Yeah. But you remember when Billy would go visit the elders? It was like a bowling ball cut in half with little like lights on it. And what did he say? Oh, elders, fleet and strong and wise, appeared before thy seeking eyes. And you hear like this
poetic.
Wow. They're all sitting there on this. It's supposed to be the Rock of Eternity. Billy, you've been asked by someone. What do you mean? What do you mean, Zeus? He means, Billy, that it's like.
And the hero always has to have a dorky voice. It's just like, what do you mean? What? I'm the next of kin. I'm the chosen one. I will say.
Didn't they do that animation like Clutch Cargo almost?
Kind of, but it was
kind
just
of not.
That's why it caught on with kids, because basically that's the audience's connection.
But
my ears didn't see me. That was Lou Scheimer doing all the voices.
Oh wow!
Not all of them. Adam West was doing one of them.
Okay, shit.
and we're trying to figure.
Well, Billy, old chum.
Yeah, I think he did the voice of Solomon. Because I was Solomon or Zeus, I don't remember. But you remember what happened when they changed Captain Marvel's?
Yeah.
It became John Davy. Now, I'm not going to say anything bad about John Davy because John Davy was a really good Captain Marvel. You know, Jackson Bostwick always say is like the Lone Ranger. John Davies Captain Marvel is like George Reeves' Superman.
Sweet. That's a good.
You know,
yeah.
It's two different characters altogether because, you know, it's like he shows up, he's like, well, Mentor, it looks like these kids are safe, and you know, where it was like, you know,
till next time.
Till next time, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, Captain Marvel. You know.
See you later in the episode.
Always had to amp up the sound effects. Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
and that's the theme music.
And what would they do at the end of each show? He would jump off like a platform, and he'd be like, "Hi, today we learned about what it's like to bully people and how people don't like it." They always had a little tag at the
end of
it.
Infomercial, yeah.
Yeah, the morals.
Yeah, and that what was so great about it. You know, they had the morals at the end of it. You know, and then the next year, ISIS comes along.
Yeah.
And what did you guys think of that? I don't know if you ever saw it.
I definitely think I saw part of it.
Yeah,
but it just vaguely. Like it would often be on after like an NBA game or during the 90s. Again, the program was unpredictable. They were trying to have something for everyone. They were trying to have the more modern shows that were being syndicated once they got to the third season, and then the cartoons just nonstop showing on TNT and TBS and Cartoon Network, and I saw a good chunk of them. I didn't see a lot of the early ones. I just would have been too young, and the TV wouldn't have been on.
It's okay. No, it's all right. Don't worry.
But it was still cool to just kind of. I think that's why these cartoons became immortalized, and you'll always find someone who's familiar with radio before they actually make it part of their major. Is just that they knew about just all these cartoons just resonated. They're just going to be ageless because it's just such.
Yeah.
There's something for everyone.
Well, the great thing about ISIS was that, before it became the name of a terrorist organization.
I was waiting.
Or spy agency.
I was waiting.
Yeah.
Would take it they're a big fan.
Yeah. And sadly, Joanna Cameron passed away like last year.
Yeah.
I'm looking at even some of the other announcers, and it's like, Jesus, the guy who played fucking what's his name on I think one of the gorillas, with the brain. I always forget his name, but on Super Friends, I think he also passed away like 2 years ago.
Oh, the Gorilla Grodd.
I think so.
Grodd.
Yeah.
Jack Angel.
I think so. Yeah.
Jack Angel. Yeah, Jack Angel. I talked to Jack Angel.
How was he?
A while back. He was a great guy. He said the thing when you did Super Friends is that if you were in the booth, and he said the great thing was like they'd always cut at a certain time. He said the great thing was like if he would do Samurai and Hawkman, and if it was Samurai and Hawkman, all he had to do was change the inflection of his voice.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because Samurai talked like was talking like he talked Japanese. Like he wasn't talking like Japanese, but he would do that like I don't want to say Charlie Chan.
Very silted kind of.
Yeah, where Hawkman was kind of like like I want to kick some ass kind of thing. But
Nice.
he told me stories about Danny Dark. They would all do cut ups in the studio and stuff like that. He said there was stuff that was edited down, or they were like doing bloopers and stuff like that. So he said it was fun doing that. He said that basically was his bread and butter. And he said Michael Bell was great to work with, and it was all a bunch of people that he loved working with. But with now I'm going to swing back to ISIS for a minute. But ISIS was like the first real female superhero show.
Yeah.
Very progressive during its time.
Because it comes on way before, like a year or so before Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
and
it's animated.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't animated. It was live action. It was live action.
So what am I thinking? What's the one other animated show?
You were thinking of. I think you were thinking of.
There was another animated show around the same time, and I always.
Oh, I know. The jungle one. The jungle.
Okay.
Rena the Jungle. What?
Oh yeah.
Rena the Jungle Girl.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Rena.
Which was kind of like.
Jungle Girl.
Now, did that come before the Sheena comics, or was that?
That's after the Sheena comics.
Okay. Yeah,
but it was first to be made, basically.
Yeah, they just said some guy. They didn't bring in Hawkgirl till like the end of the '79 season. And they didn't bring in the Atom till a little later too, but he was still, which is funny enough, he's part of the Filmation Justice League too.
Yeah.
So, but they do, they make the thing I was going to tell you about the reason why there was a change in Captain Marvel's. The story goes is that Jackson Bostic was filming a stunt. And he hurt his eye. He got what's known as a mouse, which is like a big knot under the eye. Oof. And what happened was that they had to stop filming. There's actually film of him getting hurt. And Filmation fired him because they said, you have to be back in 2 days. And the doctor's like, look, he can't do anything. His eye's like practically swollen shut. And so they said, all right, we'll get John Davey in, who was originally going to play. And he has no ill feelings towards John Davey. He doesn't.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like he said, look, it's a job. I'll just do it, But the funny thing is that he sued Filmation for breach of contract.
Oh.
And he won. So, I mean, that's good for him. But,
he had nothing against other actor just making his living.
Yeah.
He's just like, still, you basically paid me for 1 year when you're going to pay me more.
Yeah. But and then those shows go off, and then you've got Space Academy, because that comes out in 77,
more or less,
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, because guess what comes out that year again? Star Wars. Yeah. Little movie called Star Wars comes out, and everybody, I think, jumped on that bandwagon too.
Yeah, well, it changed how everything was commercially just made, and
they revamped the Fantastic Four to have Herbie the robot. Does anybody remember that?
I remember that.
I never saw it, but I knew there was a 70s one, but.
There was the 60s one, which I thought was really cool. And Tom, you can back me up on this. The 70s one was kind of lame.
Yeah. And then they tried to spin the thing off into his own cartoon for a season.
Ring thing, do your thing. It was the Flintstones thing hour. Or the Flintstones. It was the Flintstones, and I think the thing, but the kid's name is Benji Grimm instead of Ben Grimm.
Yeah,
he's like this 90-pound weakling, and he has a ring that he puts together, and he becomes the thing. So, they were kind of like scraping the barrel at that point. But then you got to realize, I know we're going all over the place with this, but and it's weird too. The Flintstones made a comeback in the 70s too.
That's right. They had a few different iterations of Flintstones.
That was kind of the thing to go do is every other year you got a Flintstones or Jetsons knockoff.
Well, the Jetsons didn't really come back till the 80s. But they were playing the Jetsons in the 70s in the morning. I remember that. Sometimes on Saturday mornings they would play the Jetsons. But the Flintstones, I remember those Flintstone shows are the last ones Alan Reed did as the voice of as Fred Flintstone.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
And he passed away, I think, in '78, and they brought Henry Corden in, who was a great actor, and he had the same. He played Mr. Babbitt on the Monkees. You would, if you watch the Monkees episodes that are Mr. Babbitt, he's in them. That's Henry Corden, and he was a great actor too.
It seemed like that was a trend, though, that can definitely continue the most into the 80s.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a jacked up